Hello guys and welcome back. In this module we'll be learning about geometrical grids, okay, and grid based designs in Adobe Illustrator. Okay, now grids are very popular among professional designers, okay, and they help us achieve geometrically balanced proportioning in our designs, okay, and they can be used to achieve very cool geometrical artworks, even logo designs, okay, and so many other sorts of designs. Okay, now we are going to learn about all this in this module. So right now I'm just on Pinterest. Okay, if you don't know Pinterest is a platform just like Instagram, okay, but it's for let's say businesses. It's just like a picture based search engine. Okay, it's just like picture based search engine, okay, and we can really find amazing creative works on Pinterest. Now I've just searched for grid based illustrations, okay, and right away you can see some of these illustrations. Okay, most of them have been created with grids. Okay, so let's look at this one for example. Now we can see that this is a geometrical artwork and then it's been created with grids, and you can see the balance in the artwork, right? We can see a lot of balance. We can see the left side is balanced with the right side, and the upper part of the design is balanced with the lower part of the design. Okay, and this is basically a search engine, like I said. So if you click here, if you click on the image, it's taking you to the website. You see this is linked to skillshare.com. Okay, sorry. Yeah, so we are back on our main page. Now you can see a lot of designs. All of these have been created with grids with the use of grids. Let me open this one. So you see this is very amazing, very nice. All of these have been created with the use of grids. Okay, look at this one, also created with the use of grids, and we are going to create an artwork similar to this at the end of the module, okay, after we've learned a lot about grids. Yep, this is another one, another good one. Okay, so I'm looking for a logo design. I would like to show you a logo design that was created with grids. Okay, let me just put logo design here. Logo design. Yep, and right away we can see some. Let's look at this one. This definitely leads to a blog article. Okay, so if you click here you go to blog, but let's just look at the image here. We can see that this is a grid, and this is an isometric grid. It's a type of grid, an isometric grid, and of course we're going to look at all types of grids and how to create them and use them in Illustrator in the next video probably. But this is an isometric grid, and we can see that this logo has been created using this grid. Okay, it's been created using this grid. So that's the way we use grids to create logo designs. Okay, now we can also see this one. You can see that all of this have been created with the help of a grid, as you can see here. Okay, so we can really create balanced designs and really amazing designs with grids. In fact, most pro logo designs have been created with grids. Well, I would say a lot of them have been created with grids. Okay, grids just make everything very easy for designers, for illustrators. Okay, so just come on your own and see all of these designs, so and more understanding of the whole grid thing. Okay, let me look at this logo. You can see how this one has been created with the use of grids, right? Yeah, very nice. So we can see the balance, we can see the professionality, and we can see everything that grids have to offer. So that'll be it for this one on Pinterest. I'm just going to go into Illustrator and start the video. Okay, we're going to start learning more about grids. So I'm going to start with a new document, and we're using the common preset here. Okay, so when it comes to creating of grids, we have a number of ways we could create grids. Okay, and we have a number of ways we could create grids. Now the easiest one will be to come to this place. Okay, this line tool. right? This line segment, to just click and hold, and right away you can see these last two tools. We have this rectangular grid tool and we have the polar grid tool. So these are the first, probably most easy way to create grids. So I've just selected the rectangular grid tool, and when I just click and drag, we can see right away that I have now created a grid. Okay, now we can see that this grid has a set of columns and set of what do we call them, rows, right? And now we can start creating using our grid. We can just take probably our pen tool, and as you can see, when I come to a place where two lines intersect, you can see that it now tells me intersect. Okay, and then when I click, I will now be able to click and just continue drawing what I want to draw. Okay, so this is probably the easiest way to create a grid, the quickest way to create a grid. Okay, now you can see what I've created using this grid by just clicking and clicking and clicking from one intersection to another. Okay, so that's probably the most easiest way to create a grid. Now if you come here again, you're going to see this polar grid tool. Now this is another type of grid. It's a polar grid. Okay, and you can kind of edit everything we see here, and we're going to do that just in a bit. I'm going to delete all of them. Now I'm going to click and select the rectangular grid tool again, and when I come here and double click, you can see that this rectangular grid tool option comes up. Okay, and if I of course double click on the tool again, we can see that the same option comes up. Right now, these options will control the type of grid we'll create. Right now we have the width, we have the height, and all of them are in pixels. Okay, so that's the height and the width of the grid. So let's make this 1000 pixels by 1000 pixels. Sorry, 1000. Okay, so 1000 by 1000. Then we have horizontal dividers, of course, which are the horizontal dividers, and then we have vertical dividers, which are the vertical dividers. So depending on the number we put here, let's put 10, we'll have certain number of rows and columns. And we have this one which says Q. We're going to look at it in a minute, not now. And basically that's all. We can fill the grid with color, or we can just create it like this. So when we click and drag, I'm holding down shift now to create something squared. Okay, so when I leave it, we can see that our grid has been created, right? And I'm just going to come and create another grid. Okay, so I'm going to hold down shift and drag. Okay, and I'm just going to release my shift and then start messing around with some shortcuts. So when I hit F, we can see that we have our horizontal dividers coming down, right? So these are our horizontal dividers coming down when I hit F. So we can see that we are now able to bring them down to adjust the spaces from the top to the bottom. Okay, so the top spaces are bigger now, and then as it comes lower, it now reduces in size. And when I hold down V or hit V, okay, you can now see that we are having the opposite. So F for horizontal skew up and down, so F for down and V for up. Okay, F for down and V for up. Okay, and then if we now hit X, we'll now see that we are not messing around with the vertical, right? X and C. Okay, so F and V, X and C. Okay, so these are now the skews. Okay, let's say I double click on this tool now and then check the skew. We can now see that the skew has been messed with. Now it's 40% and 40% here. So it means if I draw it now, you see that it's 40% to the horizontal and 40% to the vertical. Okay, as you can see. So that's the skew option. So sometimes you might want to create stuff and you might want a grid that looks like this. Okay, so this is the way to create it. You would have to mess around with the skew. So it's also possible to add grids. Okay, what do I mean by add grids? To combine grids, rather. You can combine multiple grids, and we're going to look at this also. But for now, you know what the skew does. So we're just going to look at the polar grid tool. Now the polar grid creates this type of grid, right? The polar grid. If I hit the same F, we can see what's happening, right? And if I hit V, we can see what's happening. We are now messing with these lines, right? We're now messing with these lines. And then if I hit X, we can see that we're now messing with the circles, and C, we're also messing with the circles. Okay, so I didn't talk about this other shortcut, shift and the keyboard directional buttons. Okay, so if you hold down shift and hit right, okay, we can see that we are adding these dividers, right, this line dividers. And if we hold down shift and kind of hit left, we are reducing them. And so also with the circles, if we hold down shift and go up, we see that we are adding them. If we hold down shift and go down, we see that we are reducing them. Okay, so that's the shortcuts for this tool. And you have to know that if you create your grid and would like to mess around with the horizontal and vertical dividers like we did with the shortcuts just previously, you have to know that you won't release your mouse. Okay, you have to hold your mouse while doing that. So I'm holding my mouse and I'm just reducing the rows and columns like this. That's of course with the directional keys and holding down shift. Okay, and if I want to mess around with their positions, we know what to do, right? X and C, F and V, X and C, F and V. So these are the shortcuts for this one. Okay, now that you know, we are now going to be talking about other ways to create our grid. So we've looked at two ways. Now this is the first one, which is using the rectangular grid tool, and we've seen the shortcuts for this. We have the second one, which is using the polar grid tool, and we've seen also the shortcuts for this. So I'm just going to create a grid with our line segment tool right now. So I'm just going to click our line segment tool. Okay, that's this one. Then I'm going to draw a line. Okay, holding down shift from top to bottom. Okay, and what I'll then do is select the guy, hold down alt and drag it to the left, or to the right rather, to create a duplicate. I'm going to select the both of them. Go to options, or rather object and blend and make. Okay, you can see our blend. Now I'm going to double click on our blend tool and go to specific steps, and now we can see that we have 882 steps. But we don't want that. Let's make it 10 and okay. Now we can see that we've now created the vertical lines, right? Okay, and what we then need to do is just right click, transform, rotate. Okay, let's rotate it by 90. Okay, and let's copy. Now immediately you can see that we have now created a perfect rectangular grid. Okay, just by using the blend tool, and immediately we can either group these guys, or we can just go to object, blend and expand, and we have our grids perfectly created like this. We can now group them and start to use them right away. Okay, so as you can see, this is another interesting way of creating your grids. One of the way of creating our grids is to come to our objects. We just give this yeah, you know what, let me just remove the fill color and give it a stroke of 2 pixels. So select your shape, come to object, come to path and split into grids. So if you click here, we'll then see this option. I'm going to click on preview so we see what's happening. Now we can see the rows and columns, right? Now we have number. Presently we have just one. If we add this, we'll see that we have a new row. We add this, we'll see that we have a new column, and we have other options, right? Let me just add maybe 4. Yeah, and we're going to see what these other options do. Let's look at gutter. Now when I add the gutter, we can see that there is a demarcation. Okay, it's creating a gutter in between the rows, right? And we have the ones for column, and we can see that we are creating a gutter in between the columns. Okay, so let's just make this 28, and yeah, now this is the total, which is in pixels, of course. Okay, the total width and the total height, right? Or height and width, right? Let's just make this the same as this. Okay, it was the same, and basically that's how the options here work. And we can add guides. Okay, now these are the guides. and we can not add guides. Okay, and then just okay, and right away we can see that our grids have been created, okay, with a bit of style, right? And we have them as separate shapes. Now select this guy, we can see that we have them as separate shapes. They are not linked to each other. So that's another way of creating these grids. And right away we can just select the both of them, or all of them rather, and group, Ctrl G, and we can now use them as one. We can use them as separate objects, maybe to do separate things. Okay, we can give it a color. We can okay, let me try using the shape builder tool and add colors. So I'm just adding random colors. I'm not doing anything beautiful and specific. Okay. Now we can see that we just created our grid and we added colors, okay, to the boxes. So this is another interesting way of creating our grids, just by going to path and we'll split to grids, and we're going to use all of these options very well in further lessons in this module. Okay, and lastly I'm going to show you guys the one last way I create grids in Adobe Illustrator. That's by going to view and then coming here to show grid. So if you click show grid, you can see that we now have our grids. Okay, now these grids are of course inherent to Adobe Illustrator. They are default grids, and we can actually modify how they look so that they fit to what we are trying to create, right? So let's go to view again, and we always should make sure snap to grid is on. Okay, so if we snap to grid, we'll see that everything we create will be snapped to our grid. So we can see that Adobe Illustrator now intelligently snaps everything we create to our grid boxes. Okay, so it's easy to create something that has a good proportion, okay, that's proportional to our grids. Okay, perfect, guys. So that's the snap to grid feature. And how do we modify these grids, right? So I'm going to just hit Ctrl K for my preferences. Now the preferences, like I said in one of the initial videos, I think one of the earliest videos in this course, controls of course our settings, right? The whole settings of how Adobe Illustrator will work, how Adobe Illustrator will look. Okay, everything can be controlled from our preferences. And we kind of looked at this keyboard increment the other time, and this time we are going to look at not smart guides. We're going to look at guides and grid. Okay, guides and grid, so we can control or edit how our grid will look from here. Now we have the color, that's the color of our grid. We can make this blue, and okay, right away we can see that our grid has changed color. So Ctrl K again, and we can see that we can change the style from line to dots, and right away when we zoom out we'll see that we have tiny dots. Okay, tiny dots, and that's now how our grids will be. And we can see that they still snap, right? Even though they are barely visible, they still snap. They are barely visible. Okay, so that's one way of creating our grids. Let's Ctrl K again to see some other options. We have so I'm going to just take this guy back to line. We have the grid line. Okay, grid line every. Okay, so this is basically telling Adobe Illustrator the size of our grid lines. Okay, so let's just okay and go back to our preferences and change this guy so it's 72 on a default, so let's make it 200 so we can see the difference. So we can see that our grids are now bigger. Okay, our grids are now bigger in size. And Control K, and we can these subdivisions will control the number of subgrids inside each and every one of these bigger grids. Okay, so now presently there are 8 here, 8 here, and if we make this, let's make this 20 so we can see how plenty they now become. You see, they are now plenty. Okay, they are now plenty. Now 20 20, so 20 times 20, that's 20 times 20, that's probably 400. So there are 400 boxes here, 400 boxes here. Okay, so that's how to control our grids. So I'm just going to take this back to 72, this guy back to 8, and I'm going to just change the color. Sorry, change the color back to light gray, and okay, now we have everything just like how we had it before. With this, we've come to the end of this lecture where we had a brief introduction of what grids are and how grids work. Okay, just going to go to view and hide my grid. Perfect. So see you in the next one. Bye bye.